I was on the dance floor. I was signing autographs, taking pictures with people, and I was talking to these three and heard a gunshot. I pulled my gun out and held it over my head because I didn't want to bump into anybody. People were yelling, "He got a gun," you know. And so I think that's what gave people the belief that maybe that person with the gun could have possibly been the person who done it. When they questioned me, it wasn't a murder investigation at the time. This was a shooting. So I'm like, whoever got shot gonna tell him who shot him.
Did you go home that night?
No, I never.
So from that night,
I never saw the streets until 2021. Yo, what up? This is Mac, and we rocking with Video Wayne. Holla.
February 21st, the year 2000. What happened this night inside Club Mercedes?
In February of 2000, a man was shot and killed at the Club Mercedes. A year later, rapper McKinley Phipps was convicted of manslaughter.
The feeling and the energy that was in your mind, that was in your heart, you know. So if it's safe to talk about that night?
It was a typical night like anything else. I started a company at the time with my parents. We started Camouflage Entertainment. We were throwing events in different areas. And we were basically recruiting artists. Wasn't too particular about the location because I felt it was relatively small for what we had done before. My dad was watching one area. My mother was collecting the admission fee, her and my aunt. My aunt's old man, who eventually confessed to it, was at the back door. He was like a back door bouncer. I was on the dance floor area. I was signing autographs, taking pictures with people, and I was talking to these three and heard a gunshot, you know what I mean? And as soon as I heard a gunshot, I basically, like, all in one motion, when I heard the shot, I went to the ground. I took the young lady who was next to me, I pulled her down. I said, get on the ground, you know what I mean? Because, you know, we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know who they're shooting at. And I don't run when I hear gunshots, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you can be running in the direction of the, you know, the shot. So I pretty much get low and try to figure out where it's coming from. So that's what I did. And then I got up and I done probably the dumbest thing that I can recall doing in my life, which cost me 21 years. So that's why I call it the dumbest thing I ever done. I pulled my gun out and held it over my head because I didn't want to bump into anybody. You know, I was looking for my mom. I wanted to go secure her, make sure she was straight. So when I pulled my gun out, I didn't want to risk bumping into somebody and having the gun go off, so I held it above my head. I'm taller than everybody, so I'm like, if this gun is here, everybody is safe, right? And so I held the gun like this and I kind of scooted through the crowd. I grabbed my homie Russell, and my other homie, Big Darryl, grabbed me, and they kind of formed a shield around me, and we ran toward the front door looking for my mother. But as I was running toward the front door, I was yelling, where my mom at? Where my mom at? You know what I mean? And people were yelling, he got a gun, you know? And so I think that's what gave people the belief that maybe that person with the gun could have possibly been the person who done it.
But when they screaming, he got a gun, it was
yeah, I was running, trying to get out of the club with a gun in my hand, and I could hear people in the distance yelling, "He got a gun!" and you know, this, that, and the other. So I left out, went straight to the house.
At this point, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know anybody is shot. I don't know nothing. So I just leave out of the club. It's smoky in there. It's dark. It's crowded. You know, people yelling. I went straight home. We drove from Slidell. I was living in Baton Rouge at the time, straight to my house. And when I got to my house, that's when I learned of someone had actually been shot. When I got to my house, the guy who was house sitting my younger siblings, he was like, "Slim, the detectives just called here and they want to question you about a shooting." So in that moment, I was, you know, brought to the knowledge that someone was actually shot. Now, at that moment, the person who was shot was still alive. So it wasn't a murder investigation. They were investigating a shooting, right? So I thought I was okay because, you know, if whoever was shot, in my little mind, it was like whoever was shot is going to be able to tell them who shot them, right? Yeah. So I wasn't even concerned about being charged with no murder. But what would happen is I started thinking about the one thing that I knew I was wrong, and that was having a gun in the club. I didn't have a conceal and carry. I don't even know if one existed at the time for clubs. So,
was it the same caliber of gun that went off?
No.
Okay.
So what happened was, when they questioned me, I basically told them I didn't have a gun on me. Because keep in mind, it wasn't a murder investigation at the time. This was a shooting. So I'm like, personally, whoever got shot, gonna tell them who shot him. And the only thing I'm trying to do is avoid getting a gun charge. You know what I mean? So they're like, you got a gun? I'm like, nah. So eventually someone came in the room and whispered something to the detective. And that's when everything got serious. Unfortunately, that young man had succumbed to his injuries. And after he succumbed to his injuries, it became a murder investigation. And that's when I got scared. Because now, the person who was actually shot cannot speak for themselves, which leaves it open for anybody, you know what I'm saying, to get discharged. So, after I was made aware that this person was deceased, I told the detectives that I lied about not having a gun. And my reason at that point was because I needed this gun that I told them I didn't have to clear me. You know what I mean? Because I knew that if we went got it and they tested it, they would find out that my gun was never fired and I would go home. So now I backtracked me saying I didn't have a gun. So now I'm telling them like, yo, I did have a gun. Let me go get it for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because now I need this gun to free me. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that they would test it and that I would just go home. Yeah. But you know, of course.
Not being the same caliber. I don't know if they knew that at that point, but that.
I don't think they knew at that point, but I also think that at that point it was, it didn't matter. I think at that point they really were honing in and focusing on me as the suspect. And so I think that everything they did after that was to basically corroborate whatever they
had already made their mind up.
Yeah, they made their mind up. In fact, they told my dad we got who we want.
Did you go home that night?
No, I never.
So from that night,
that night, I never saw the streets until 2021.
No bond?
No bond. Denied me every bond. I tried to get a bond all the way up until the Louisiana Supreme Court denied it. Yeah. So I was denied basically every appeal that I tried.
So what happens? They come and pick you up. You go to the parish?
From my house, they brought me to Klein Peter substation in Baton Rouge. From there, they transferred me to Baton Rouge Parish to book me as a fugitive for St. Tammany.
The trial, your trial.
Mm-hmm.
During the trial, what were you? Were you feeling good about things, or were you feeling like kind of?
Yeah, I actually believed up until the guilty verdict. I believed I was going home. You know, I had no doubt in my mind that the jurors was going to believe this. You know, I felt that, man, you have no credible witness, you have no weapon, and all you have is circumstantial evidence at best, and you have, you know, I just didn't really think they had enough. For me, if I was a juror, it wouldn't have been enough for me. So I didn't think they had enough, so I was confident up until the guilty verdict. And when I heard it, man, it was a blow. You know, I remember just dropping my head, just crying. You know what I mean? Just like I couldn't believe it. I was in disbelief.
Damn, bro. Numbing? Was it numbing?
Nah, because if it was numbing in that moment, I wish it would have been numbing in that moment. You know what I mean? Because maybe I wouldn't have felt it so heavily. But nah, it wasn't numbing. I felt every bit of it. You know what I mean? It was the worst day of my life. Like when those people dropped that hammer and found me guilty, it was the worst day of my life.
Bro.
Words can't even describe how I felt. I mean, I couldn't even put it into words. It was the worst day of my life.